Now we have Rod Bailey on the phone.
Hey,
Hello.
Rod.
Awesome.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
We can. How are you going?
Oh, I'm going fantastic, thank you.
That's good. You're with Daniel and Lindsay this morning, and we are really excited to hear what you've got to share with us about country living. What's new in the world of country living today?
Oh, look, some things are brand new and some things are just as they ever were.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
And just catching you guys up, I'm not sure whether you've been part of this conversation from a distance or not, but Scaffy and Lawson and I have been talking about the different steps a person might take towards
Moving to the country, yeah?
a country living life. And
Yeah,
we're
right.
up to looking at specifics about different aspects we need to consider when we're potentially, when we're assessing a property for its suitability.
Yeah,
for us.
right. Okay.
Yeah, and last time we talked about how it was important to make a checklist
Yep.
of all the different attributes we're looking for, and then order those items in priority, and then decide which of those are non-negotiable, and then to prepare to compromise even on your non-negotiables, because there's no perfect property out there. If there is, somebody else already owns it and won't part with it for any amount of money. So I thought today we'd start looking at those factors we need to consider when assessing the property. And there's many variables, each one potentially critical to our success. And what I've done is I've ordered them by things that you can't change.
Yeah.
You know, things like buildings and improvements can be important to our decision making, but
you
they
can
can all be
change.
changed.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
what we need to do is look at a property, not just how it is right now when we're viewing it or assessing it, but how it could potentially be.
So this is potentially a long-term decision and long-term commitment. Is that?
Yeah, I think many of us are looking to make a long-term commission. What do they call it these days? Looking for our forever home. And
that's heaven, isn't it?
Sorry, what was that?
That's heaven, isn't it? The forever home.
But to be realistic, many of us will take multiple steps towards our forever home.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But what we need to do is look at the potential of a property, and its potential is only limited by what can't be changed about it.
So things like its topography and the water sources on the property, that sort of thing, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. And I guess what I'd like to start at is with climate. You know, if we look at a map of Australia, we've got general geographical areas that link to climate. You know, if we think about it, you know, we've got the Riverina in New South Wales, we've got the west on the western side of the range, we've got the south coast, we've got the north coast. You know, we've got Sydney Basin, and each of these have different climatic factors.
Different amounts of rainfall, different humidity and different temperatures.
Correct. And not only that, but our climate can change over a relatively short distance. So I'm here on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. 60 or 70 k's inland, we have the Great Dividing Range, and up on top of that range, just 50 or 60 kilometres away, the climate is completely different to here. And then even in the same valley, you know, at one end of our valley, I live in the Rollins Plains Valley, at one end of the valley, even though climate is generally the same, there's different rainfall at one end to the other. One side of the valley gets lovely northeasterly sea breezes, whereas the other doesn't. And so these are important factors, and you can only really get to understand those local factors of climate by talking to the locals.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So the property that you've got there in Rollins Plains, are you thankful for the unique microclimate that it's got there, or after buying it, are you like, oh man?
No, look, I think the microclimate we've got here is pretty good. And
yeah, good.
I just mentioned the sea breeze. You know, I'm standing here outside my garden gate, and I'm looking to the northeast, and I know that my neighbours over there, like they're 3 or 4 or 5 properties removed, I know they didn't get much of a sea breeze yesterday, and for me, my comfort and my team as we're working in the garden, that made a big difference. The sea breeze kind of goes up and over the Cooperabung Range sort of thing, and they're living in the lee of the Cooperabung Range, but by the time the sea breeze gets across the valley, we get it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so those sorts of things can be really important for livability sort of thing.
Yeah, and look, we can relate to that. So we moved out to 27 acres about 5.5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now, and we're on the north side of the Watagans, which is, you wouldn't even call it a mountain range, but I guess a line of hills maybe. And on the south side of that, Martinsville tends to get a lot more rain than we do on the north. So I'm not sure if we've got buyer's regret, but that is an important consideration. We're blessed with where we are, so it's okay. And particularly with all the rain that we've had over the last 5 years, we've had more than enough rain.
Exactly, I know what you mean. Often climate, our choice of climate and thus geographical area is largely guided by personal preference. My wife Desley loves the hot, humid weather. I would much rather be in more southern climes because I don't really like the heat and humidity. Other factors, maybe a person's health. I don't know whether it's still a thing, but in the old days, the doctor would say, go and live by the seaside for your health, etc. And also climatic conditions to a large degree determine what you can or can't grow if you're looking to grow either a home garden or to grow crops commercially. Climate is a major factor in that.
So speaking of things that you can't change and growing things, is soil one of those things that you can't change, and it is very important for growing things, or can you change the soil? What's your comment on that?
In a macro sense, you can't change the soil, but in a micro sense, you can. Here we've got very ordinary soil, and so the parent material, if you like, if we go back and look at the basic constituents of the soil, it's very ordinary. But soil can be built to a point. So in our garden beds, we've been managing those for 6, 7, 8, 10 years sort of thing. And our topsoil's now about 2 to 3 times deeper than it was before.
Yeah,
and
nice.
Richer in organic matter, et cetera, et cetera. But we still do have that same parent material, and it is a limiting factor. And that parent material will largely determine whether growing is easy or hard. My friends Tim and Andy Hopkins down in Victoria, they've grown here in Rollins Plains as well. They live at Launching Place down there. And when they put something in the ground, it's going to grow and it's going to thrive. But here in the base soil, fruit trees and nut trees and stuff are just going to struggle, even if you add lots of organic matter and compost and fertilizer and stuff like that. And so to answer your question, yes, soil can be built, but there is limiting factors there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So tell us more about this list of things that the things that can't be changed. Yep.
So soil is super important, but I think possibly the most important is water. You can't change the potential of water. You've either got a high rainfall area or you don't. You've either got creeks and rivers or you don't, or you either have artesian basins where you can put a bore down or you can't. You can develop that potential. And so rainfall, obviously really important. You need enough rainfall to provide yourself drinking water, and maybe you'll use your rainfall for crops as well. But that said, some things, sometimes you get to a point like where we are, where during summer, and sounds like where you are, you have too much rain. So sometimes that's something that's a limiting factor. We're always looking for a running river. Every person that lives in the country wants to live on a running stream or river permanent. They're pretty rare. So we might settle for a seasonal creek and put dams on that seasonal creek if you're allowed to. And different states have different requirements there where you can and can't build dams, and how how large they can be. Some properties have spring-fed situation. You know, if you've got high elevated area on your property or an adjacent property, sometimes there's springs, water coming out of the ground. And some people are blessed to have underground water and thus can put a bore down. Whenever we're talking about building dams and bores and even running creeks, the question has to be asked, am I allowed to use this water? Because sadly, just because you've got it doesn't mean you can use it, because there's all sorts of legislative restrictions on that, either from a federal or a state or a council level.
Right, yeah.
But in New South Wales, just about every property, if you're on a creek or a stream, you can have what's called stock and domestic rights. So you can use as much water as you need for a home garden and to, have enough water for your cattle or your sheep or your horses or whatever you've got. But as soon as you take the next step and you're growing crops commercially, then you actually need another license. So it's important. What sort of life am I looking to live on my country property? How big do I want my garden and orchard to be? Do I want to take the next step and grow crops for sale? Is the potential of the water on this property gonna meet that? You can see, if you're just looking for somewhere to live and you have 5 or 6 rainwater tanks or whatever you take, depending on how many teenage daughters you have, how long it does need to be. Some properties you don't need, depending on your projected lifestyle, don't need a huge amount of water.
Yeah, right.
Whereas we're running an organic commercial market garden here, and so we need lots of water, and we're thankful that we're blessed with that.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, we've got about a minute left, Rod. This has been really interesting. What have you got any final things to share about anything else on the list, or any tips as to how to go about putting this into practice?
So one last thing about water, I think that's so important to state. We can have too much water. Is this property you're looking at a flood risk? Or is half of it swamp, or is it adjacent to a swamp? So we've got to look at that other side of the thing as well. And, two top considerations, climate and water, and next time we get together we'll get stuck into things like location and aspect and topography and the size you need and the zoning and the access and vegetation and the pests and the wildlife and the historic use. There's so many factors, and I look forward to discussing more of them as we go along.
Oh, it's fantastic having your wealth of wisdom, Rod. We really appreciate the insights that you can give as we look to move to the country. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.